Even though his own arm was still bleeding, just to be more impressive, the young black man pulled out a gun to threaten a strange white girl. Waiting for a long time, the girl finally received treatment. Out of gratitude, the girl's father asked the young man what he wanted in return. But he asked for nothing. As the police dragged him away, he kept shouting to spread the love. Although initially confused, a few days later on a rainy night, a reporter found her beloved car on the roadside had been wrecked. With no surveillance nearby, the culprit couldn't be found. Just as she was about to accept her bad luck, the girl's father happened to pass by and gave her a brand new Jaguar. Faced with such a windfall, the reporter was initially very cautious. After all, in a selfish society where everyone looks out for themselves, it's unlikely someone would willingly give away $1 million luxury car. So she cautiously asked, "Are you trying to bribe a stranger like me to secretly kill your wife? Or do you have an antisocial personality and have planted a bomb in this car to blow me to pieces?" The girl's father smiled helplessly, as if seeing his own naive self from a few days ago. Then he seriously explained, "I once received a favor from someone, and now I'm passing the love on as promised. If you can continue to help strangers, that's best. If not, I won't interfere. But if you dare to reveal my name, as a lawyer, I'll make sure you face endless lawsuits." Watching him leave, the reporter, who was initially confused, suddenly sensed there was a big story to uncover. So she began to investigate. But she never expected that the initiator of the Pay It Forward plan was a primary school student from thousands of miles away. 4 months ago, a new sociology teacher, Eugene, assigned a strange homework: come up with an idea to change the world and take action. The students were in an uproar, thinking it was too strange, too crazy, even too absurd. After all, even the teacher who assigned it just followed the routine of eating and teaching every day without doing anything world-changing. How could he expect teenagers to do something beneficial for the world? But Trevor fell into deep thought. Then, on his way home from school, he began to curiously observe everything around him, but the area was filled with poverty, violence, and idle hooligans. He didn't know how to change the world. Until one day, he saw a group of homeless people by the roadside, and an absurd plan suddenly popped into his mind. Immediately, he took one of the younger-looking homeless people home, not only giving him food and a bath but also sharing his long-saved pocket money with her. Meanwhile, his mother, A. Ling, who worked as a waitress at a bar, was unaware of this. When she returned home late at night and saw her son already asleep, she, being a heavy drinker, took a bottle of wine from the washing machine and drank it all, not noticing the homeless person curled up in the truck bed in the yard. The next morning, discovering that his mother, who promised not to drink, had secretly drunk a whole bottle, Trevor was immediately upset, but his mother still refused to admit it. While the two were having a heated argument, the homeless person suddenly appeared, startling A. Ling, who immediately kicked her out, which in turn angered her son. "She's my friend, and I want to help her. Besides, this is my homework. What right do you have to interfere?" After saying this, Trevor went off to school. A. Ling, strong and determined, went to the school. She didn't understand what kind of teacher would let a child bring a stranger home, so she specifically sought out Eugene to discuss it. Eugene said, "As a teacher, I just gave what I thought was a great assignment, encouraging kids to think more about the world. As for what they actually thought or did, I can't predict or control. Moreover, educating children is not solely the teacher's responsibility. Parents should also be involved. Just like you think Trevor's actions are wrong, you should talk to him, understand his thoughts, rather than arguing with me here." Although these words were reasonable, A. Ling couldn't accept them. She stubbornly believed that Eugene, as a teacher, should be responsible and even made fun of his burned face. Helpless, Eugene could only coldly drive her out of the office. Back home, a frustrated A. Ling prepared to take a nap. Hearing a noise in the warehouse, she immediately took out a shotgun to investigate, only to find the homeless person had returned. However, the homeless person wasn't there to steal but wanted to help fix the long-abandoned broken car. It turns out that with Trevor's encouragement and help, the homeless man regained hope in life. Not only did he use the money Trevor gave him to buy a new set of clothes, but he also prepared to go for a job interview tomorrow. But Arlene immediately saw that he was an addict, so she was full of doubt about what he said. Unexpectedly, the homeless man asked, "Have you ever been homeless?" "When I first had to sleep rough and could only wrap myself in newspapers, I realized my life was completely over. But just when I thought I was going to die, your son suddenly appeared and became my only lifeline." After hearing this, Arlene thought he came to fix the car to repay her son's help. Unexpectedly, he flatly denied it. "I'm not, and I can't repay him. I'm doing this just to pass on the love." At first, Arlene didn't understand what this meant. It wasn't until the homeless man explained Trevor's grand plan that she suddenly realized. Meanwhile, the students at school were sharing the progress of their projects. A boy said, "I want to create a website and then invite all the children in China to jump at the same time. Maybe the vibration could shift the Earth's orbit." The classmates were amused. Then it was Trevor's turn to share. He planned to start by helping 3 strangers, and then have those 3 strangers each help 3 more people, and so on. It only needs to be passed on 21 times to cover 1 billion people worldwide, and the world would become a better place. This is his grand plan, also known as pay it forward. As soon as he said this, the classroom erupted. Some thought the idea was very creative and gave positive recognition and encouragement. Others were skeptical, thinking, isn't this just another form of pyramid scheme? But more people thought it was simply not feasible because it required people to have a very high level of faith in the goodness of human nature. Even though he also thought it was difficult to implement, Eugene still really liked the plan. However, what interested him the most was how young Trevor came up with this idea. It turns out Trevor's dad was not only a lazy drunk but also often beat Arlene when he was drunk. Unable to endure it any longer, Arlene finally chose to divorce 2 years ago. After that, she and Trevor depended on each other. However, under the pressure of life, Arlene also developed the bad habit of drinking to drown her sorrows. No matter how much Trevor tried to persuade him, he couldn't quit. Trevor felt that his family and society were terrible, so inspired by his teacher, he came up with the idea of paying it forward, hoping it would spread like wildfire and make the world a better place. However, that day after school, when he eagerly went to check on the homeless man's situation, he found that the man had relapsed. This meant that his first attempt to help someone had ended in failure. Despite feeling very disappointed, Trevor did not intend to give up. On the contrary, after some deep thought, he decided to make Mr. Eugene his next person to help, because during this time, he keenly noticed that although Mr. Eugene always encouraged students to change, he himself was stuck in a monotonous routine, rarely interacting with others, as if trapped in an invisible cage. At this point, Trevor thought of his mom. Since her divorce, she had always been alone and never had a serious relationship. So, Trevor decided to set them up. He then invited Mr. Eugene over to their house under the pretense of it being from his mom, Arlene. When Mr. Eugene arrived that evening, Trevor feigned illness and retreated to his room, creating an opportunity for the two adults to be alone. For a moment, awkwardness filled the room, but Trevor, who was eavesdropping and peeking, didn't notice and even lit romantic candles on the dining table when they weren't looking. Seeing this, the adults felt even more awkward. After a few hurried words, they ended the meeting. Not seeing the desired outcome, Trevor was very upset. Even when Arlene explained that feelings can't be forced, he wouldn't listen. He knew very well that Arlene was still waiting for his dad to come back. He didn't want them to reconcile, because whenever his dad was home, Arlene would not only get hit but also ignore him and his feelings. Yet Arlene refused to admit it and, during an argument, angrily slapped Trevor. In an instant, both of them were stunned. Eventually, Arlene couldn't hold back her tears and left the room. Then, like an addict, she started searching everywhere for the hidden liquor. Finally, she found a bottle on the chandelier. She took a swig, but after a second, she coughed and spat it all out. Because he suddenly felt that he couldn't numb himself with alcohol anymore, otherwise, he would only sink deeper into the abyss. However, when he calmed down and was ready to apologize to Trevor, he found that Trevor was nowhere to be found. Anxious and worried, he immediately called his friends for help, but they were either drunk or unreachable by phone. With no other choice, he had to ask Eugene for help. Fortunately, Eugene was not only available, but as a teacher, he also knew that kids who want to run away from home usually take a bus. So, he drove Ling to the bus station without delay. Meanwhile, Trevor was indeed at the station, counting his change, ready to buy a ticket to leave this sad place. He was targeted by a pedophile. If Eugene hadn't arrived in time, the consequences could have been unimaginable. Ling was filled with fear after realizing what could have happened. First, he sincerely apologized to Trevor for the slap earlier, then he mustered the courage to admit, I've always had serious psychological issues, which is why I kept drinking. I know I've broken promises many times before, and there's nothing new I can say to you. But now, I truly realize the problem and really want to change completely. I know it will be very difficult, but if you can stay by my side, I think I might be able to do it. There's no normal mother in this world who doesn't love her child. Similarly, there's no normal child who doesn't care for their mother. So, when Trevor saw Ling crying and confessing, he immediately forgot his resentment and rushed into her warm embrace. Eugene quietly watched this scene, his eyes showing a complex expression of envy and sadness. After the three of them returned home safely, Ling sincerely invited Eugene to visit their home again when he had time. This incident, Eugene also developed some affection for this strong single mother. So, on the weekend, she dressed up carefully and went to Ling's workplace, pretending to run into her by chance. Then, during a casual chat, she awkwardly invited her to dinner. Although she was late for work and it was their first date, Ling still managed to win over Eugene, who valued punctuality above all, with her sincerity and genuine heart. As time went by, the feelings between them gradually warmed up, but what puzzled Ling was that Eugene never crossed the line of friendship. Their relationship seemed to be at a standstill. After another date night, Eugene, as usual, said goodnight and was about to head home. It was Ling who first broke the ice, asking if he wanted to stay over for the night. However, after hearing this, Eugene looked troubled and hesitantly came up with various excuses to refuse. Ling thought he actually didn't like her. Unexpectedly, the next second, he steadied himself again. But just when things were getting intense, he abruptly stopped, then hurriedly drove away without leaving any explanation. This left Ling very confused and puzzled. But what made her even angrier was that in the following days, Eugene seemed to vanish into thin air, with no news at all. Unable to endure this torment any longer, Ling found Eugene that night and asked directly, "Do you look down on me because I'm uneducated, or do you dislike that I've been married, or are you feeling insecure because of your burn scars? Whatever the reason, I hope you can explain it clearly. Don't keep being hot and cold, leaving me to guess wildly." Finally, under Ling's persistent questioning, Eugene revealed his fear. "My life is always the same, and I don't want this routine to be disrupted, or else I feel lost." Ling thought this wasn't a big issue at all, so she took the initiative to kiss him, saying, "If you try to change, you'll find life has much more to offer." But Eugene became even angrier, not only accusing her of not understanding him but also rudely pushing her away. Although Ling had always been proactive, at this moment, she was completely disheartened. The budding romance between them thus withered. This also meant that Trevor's second attempt to help someone had failed again. He could only pin his hopes on the third person. That day, as he passed by the school playground, he saw his childhood friend being bullied by older kids. So, he immediately stepped forward to try to stop it. But when he saw the fierce looks in the eyes of the three on the other side, he was instantly scared stiff. In the end, he watched helplessly as his friend was thrown into a trash can. Feeling guilty, Trevor sat alone by the roadside. He hated his own cowardice and was even more disappointed that his plan to spread love had completely failed. Eugene later came to comfort him, saying, "There are some things we really can't do anything about." Unexpectedly, Trevor retorted, "You clearly had the chance to help my mom, and you like her, so why did you choose to back down? Do you really have to wait until everything is beyond repair to start regretting?" It was at this moment that Eugene learned that Trevor's alcoholic father might be coming back. At first, he still found it difficult to decide. After all, this matter was too complicated for him. However, after much contemplation, he felt that Trevor made a lot of sense. One shouldn't avoid change out of fear, nor should they refrain from pursuing happiness because of it. So that night, he took the initiative to knock on Ling's door. The two spent a passionate night together. Unexpectedly, the next morning, when Eugene came out to use the bathroom, he happened to run into Trevor, which startled him back into the room. But this only excited Trevor even more because he finally saw a glimmer of hope. Perhaps the world was really starting to change. In the days that followed, they were like a happy family of three, cheering for the exciting moments of the foot swinging competition on TV and eagerly discussing weekend plans. However, happy times are always so short-lived. That night, Trevor's biological father eventually returned. He claimed that he had been sober for 6 months and hoped Ling would give him a chance to return to the family and be a good husband and father. Under his sweet-talking persuasion, Ling's once resolute refusal began to waver. Naively, she thought that perhaps only a biological father could provide the most complete love and companionship for his son. So, the next evening, she approached Eugene to apologize and explained that Trevor's father had returned, and she planned to give him another chance. After all, they had been together for 13 years. Unexpectedly, Eugene was furious, not because his feelings were toyed with, but because he couldn't understand why women were always so warm-hearted. No matter how abusive or rotten a man is, as long as he softens up and says a few nice words, everything is forgiven, and they continue to blind themselves and move forward. Little did they know, the prodigal son returning is just a beautiful lie. When Eugene was very young, his father also often beat and scolded his mother due to alcoholism. But every time his father knelt down to beg for forgiveness, his mother always chose to forgive, living in violence all along. Finally, Eugene endured until adulthood, strong enough to stand up to his abusive father. Unexpectedly, his father harbored resentment for being defied. So, on a dark and windy night, he used a wooden stick to beat Eugene, dragged him into the garage, and then poured a can of gasoline all over his son. Finally, she lit a match and threw it down. The scars on her face and body were the marks left by that nightmare. She could never forget the violent look in her father's eyes, filled with a sick sense of satisfaction. Now, she's afraid Trevor will become another version of herself, so she painfully exposes the scars she never wanted to reveal. In front of Arlene, but instead of understanding, Arlene keeps defending her ex-husband. Seeing her stubbornness, Eugene leaves, disheartened. And as Eugene predicted, a few days later, her ex-husband returned home reeking of alcohol, disrupting their peaceful life. Not only that, he complained that Trevor wouldn't speak to him. To assert his authority as a father, he almost resorted to violence. Arlene, strong as she is, could only hide in a room with her son. At that moment, she finally understood the meaning of Eugene's words and admitted she might have made a mistake again. However, Trevor didn't blame her. Instead, he comforted her gently, saying everyone makes mistakes, and it's okay as long as you realize and correct them. But Eugene didn't see it that way. He believed that if you make a mistake, you must face the consequences. Apologizing doesn't automatically grant forgiveness. So when Trevor asked him to give his mom another chance, he firmly refused. It seemed like everything was back to square one, and the plan to spread love was impossible to achieve. Trevor felt incredibly frustrated, but little did he know, he had unintentionally sparked a small flame of love. This spark quietly spread from one person to another. The first to be helped was a homeless man. Although he didn't manage to quit drugs, he passed on the love. That morning, as she was about to cross the bridge to buy scarves, she unexpectedly saw a woman about to jump off the bridge. She quickly ran over to stop her. During the process of persuading the woman, she realized the preciousness of life herself. In this way, both of them were reborn. Upon learning about the plan to spread love, Arlene was moved and found her mother, who had been out of touch and wandering for years. It turned out her mother was also an irresponsible alcoholic in her youth. So, as an adult, Arlene completely cut off contact with her. Although her mother lived in endless regret, she was too ashamed to ask for forgiveness. So, he only dared to take a distant look when he missed his daughter and grandson, then quietly left. He never thought that one day, a Ling would come to him and be willing to reconcile. So, after learning about the pass the love plan, he decided to join in. Coincidentally, that night while driving to buy wine, he saw Xiao He being chased and beaten. So he let Xiao He get in the car, escaping a disaster. Initially, when Xiao He learned why she was saved, she found it both absurd and laughable. Because she had been lonely and lived by stealing since childhood, she couldn't believe someone would help a stranger out of pure kindness. When asked to help another person, she indifferently said, "Doing good deeds is God's duty, it has nothing to do with me." Until one day, she got injured in a fight and went to the hospital. She saw a girl across from her suffering from an asthma attack, waiting with her father for over 3 hours due to limited medical resources. In an instant, as if possessed by God, she used violence to get the girl a chance to see the doctor first. But she ended up in the police station because of it. Later, the girl's father helped a reporter, who then found Xiao He and used connections to get her out of the station. Afterward, she followed the information provided by Xiao He and traced it all the way to Ling's home. To her surprise, she discovered that the source of this small wave was actually a primary school student's social science project. After understanding the whole story, to spread the love further, Trevor, accompanied by his mom and Eugene, accepted an interview with the reporter. But when the reporter excitedly asked if she felt proud of her actions, she shyly denied it. "Although I tried hard, all my efforts ended in failure. It was my mom who was braver, and it's all thanks to her that the love spread so far." After saying this, she added that courage seems to be the most important factor in this relay of love, because if someone gives up out of fear, the relay stops. However, in this society, there are always many people who, even if they live unsatisfactorily, dare not make changes, causing the whole world to remain in a bad state. After hearing this, Eugene couldn't help but feel self-critical, because he was the cowardly person Trevor mentioned. To avoid regrets in life and to stop being a failure, he immediately went to find Ling after the interview. He admitted his own cowardice and also expressed his true feelings. Just like that, the two of them truly came together. Meanwhile, Trevor once again saw his childhood friend being bullied by thugs. Unlike last time, this time he didn't choose silence and avoidance, but bravely rode his bike and charged forward. Unexpectedly, in the chaos of the big fight, someone pulled out a knife and stabbed Trevor in the abdomen. Immediately, blood gushed out, and everything around seemed to be frozen. The world plunged into a suffocating silence. Although he was rushed to the hospital in time, Trevor ultimately couldn't be saved and left this world forever. In the days that followed, Eugene and Arlene were immersed in endless grief, only able to watch Trevor's interview videos over and over to ease their longing. On the day of the interview, it happened to be Trevor's birthday, and a group of people gathered around him to celebrate. He felt like the happiest kid in the world. But soon after, he lost his life. This world seems to have always been cruel. It won't be lenient just because of your kindness. On the contrary, it seems more eager to create tragedies, completely destroying beautiful things for people to see. However, that day, as Eugene and Arlene sat in front of the TV as usual, watching Trevor's interview videos, suddenly, a sound came from outside the window. When they curiously went to the window to check, they saw countless people filled with love gathered in front of the yard, holding candles and flowers, forming a sea of warmth. In the distance, in the endless night, a stream of cars filled with love continued to flow in. Previously, a reporter had asked Trevor, "Is spreading love your birthday wish?" At that time, Trevor replied, "I don't dare to hope, because I've already blown out the candles." Now, with more candles lit for him, does it mean that the wish to spread love is gradually being realized? Pay It Forward is directed by Mimi Leder, starring Kevin Spacey and Helen Hunt, released in the year 2000 as a drama film. Although it's not a movie based on a true story, it turned fiction into reality. The film caused a phenomenal sensation the year it was released. In a chaotic and confusing era, it was like a beam of light, reigniting people's hope for a beautiful future. As the screenwriter of the film, Catherine. In the same year, the Pass on Love Foundation was established, aiming to inspire everyone to change the world through small acts of kindness. Undeniably, from a mathematical perspective, Trevor's Pay It Forward plan constructs an idealized technical model. If implemented smoothly, love can quickly spread to every corner of the world. However, people are not machines that operate according to a program. They have thoughts, emotions, and the darker weaknesses of human nature. They can be fearful, hesitant, and afraid to make changes. Some, even when stuck in a quagmire, prefer to remain stagnant and barely survive, ultimately causing the relay of love to break and making everyone a loser. This cruelly reveals that goodwill is not a panacea. True change requires continuous effort and firm resolve. Moreover, in the process of spreading love, circumstances may force the use of less honorable means. Like when Xiao He used violence to secure early treatment for an asthmatic girl, or when a journalist used connections to rescue Xiao He, who clearly broke the law. Is using improper means to achieve a benevolent goal good or evil, black or white? Human nature is ultimately complex, and so is society. But one thing is certain. Individual acts of kindness are not isolated. Each act of help can become a miracle of change for others, creating a chain reaction. Even if the power is small, as long as it is persistently passed on, it can eventually influence a broader world. Perhaps the process is winding and difficult, but with the determination to break fixed patterns and abandon self-imposed isolation, the echoes of effort will always be heard. Believe that the blooming of a single flower can break the silence of winter. The blossoming of countless flowers can awaken the sleeping earth of spring. Alright, that's all for today's movie sharing. Please like, comment, and share. Looking forward to our next encounter.